Many warlocks get their powers from extraplanar beings, but some get their power from a very special people opener that whispers sweet nothings into their minds. So today the Hexblade Warlock is what we're discussing. Hi there, I'm just a second level fighter that likes to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and today we're looking at the Hexblade Warlock subclass. Now this one's a blast from the past. As mentioned in the intro, most warlocks are simple and get their powers from a creature or being. Hexblades, however, get their powers from sentient weapons. They form a special bond with the personality of an inanimate object, and it's usually massively cursed. This weapon can take any form and may have formed its own mind, or may be something much more sinister trapped within a prison that takes the form of a people opener. It then slowly passes on its power to the unwitting or sycophantic warlock. This subclass was introduced in Xanathar's Guide to Everything and has been a fan favorite ever since. It took the simple concept of the Pact of the Blade feature and ran with it. It allowed warlocks to focus on weapon-based combat while still being able to use Eldritch Blast and throw out the occasional spell. However, the 2024 Player's Handbook reworked the Pact of the Blade to essentially do exactly what this subclass did, thus creating a reality in which every type of warlock can practice the way of the people opener if they so desire. This begs the question, does the Hexblade subclass have a place in D&D now? Oh, absolutely. You see, the Hexblade does something that no other Warlock subclass does. Let's get into it. We're going to start by taking a look at the features this subclass offers. A quick aside, Hexblade was one of the most front-loaded subclasses in the game, meaning all the powerful options were just given to you immediately, and you weren't incentivized much to stay on the path as a warlock. Multiclassing away was usually a really enticing option. While that's still kinda the case, the fact that you only get access to this subclass at level 3 now helps out a bit. And yes, I do mean level 3. Using the 2024 PHB rules, you only unlock this subclass at level 3 despite it originally being offered at first level back in the day. Anyways, what do you get? Hexblade's Curse is an incredibly powerful ability that allows you to curse a target as a bonus action. This curse lasts a minute, and while it's active, you deal extra damage to the target, and your attacks have a higher chance to crit. The damage scales with your proficiency bonus, which is incredibly rare for a low-level feature. This means it will scale even if you don't take further levels in Warlock. Additionally, if the cursed target is reduced to 0 hit points and passes on, you get some significant healing. All of this applies to weapon attacks and certain spell attacks such as Eldritch Blast. Then you get Hex Warrior, a feature that gives you proficiency with medium armor, shields, and martial weapons. You can also touch a weapon once a day and make it so that you use your charisma modifier for attack and damage rolls with that weapon. This means that charisma is your main focus when building your character, making you great in combat and at spellcasting. Now, the fact that Pact of the Blade basically does exactly what this feature does may sound like a redundancy, but this opens up a style of play that doesn't exist for other warlocks unless they jump through a few hoops and find a way to take the Shillelagh cantrip. Hex Warrior allows you to dual wield while still only using your charisma score. This works because your pact weapon and Hex Warrior touched weapon can be separate weapons. All other warlocks are limited to just a single weapon. Then you also get access to an expanded spell list at 3rd level. Unlike the newer subclasses that appear in the 2024 PHB who always have their expanded spells prepared, Hexblades don't. They have to sacrifice precious space on their list of prepared spells to take them. That being said, this list is pretty meh. Nothing here stands out too much, and as we'll cover later, none of these apart from Banishing Smite and Cone of Cold keep up with one of the eldritch invocations we have access to. However, Blink is a funny little spell to throw out every now and then, and it may keep you safe. But it's really difficult to justify spending one of your precious pact magic spell slots on Shield. Moving on, the rest of the features that Hexblades get are extremely underwhelming. At 6th level, you get a Cursed Spectre, which allows you to raise up a literal ghost buddy when you shuffle someone off their mortal coil. In other words, when you murder them. The problem with this feature is that the Spectre stat block is just weak. It's bad when you get this feature, and it only gets more noticeable as you get higher in levels. Now, the Spectre does okay when thrown at a bunch of weaker mundane enemies, but sending out the ghost of someone you murdered in cold blood into a village full of peasants is going to get you a few strange looks at most gaming tables or groups. Then at 10th level you get Armor of Hexes. While a creature is under the effects of your Hexblade's Curse feature and they hit you with an attack, you can use your reaction to essentially flip a coin and there's a 50-50 chance that the attack just misses. This is regardless of the attack roll, so this works on crits. I mean, it's okay, I guess, if you like to gamble. Finally, at 14th level you get Master of Hexes and you can now move your Hexblade's Curse around whenever the target meets an untimely demise. This is actually amazing, and up until this point you're going to wish you had this feature. Is it capstone material? Hell no. But yeah, it's better than the previous two features. Alright, here's a few general Warlock things to keep in mind. Your spellcasting works differently from everyone else. You did learn how to cast spells from a talking sword after all. You have very few spell slots and they're all the same level, capping out at level 5. They also come back whenever you finish a short rest. This means that Warlocks value spells that can be upcast and they ignore a lot of low-level utility spells cause screw wasting the precious resources on being helpful. You do get access to 6th level and higher spells, but we'll touch on that shortly. You also have access to one of the most blatantly overpowered cantrips in the game, Eldritch Blast. This thing pumps out damage like it's no one's business, and as a Hexblade, this spell is the best range damage dealing option you have when you can't reach your enemies. Then you have Eldritch Invocations. This is a highly customizable system that may be a bit much to take in at first glance, but this is what makes Warlocks really captivating in my opinion. They are essentially a bunch of small features that you can take to shape how your Warlock plays, and surprise surprise there are a bunch of them that feed into the people opener playstyle that we're going for. Here are a few notable ones. Maddening and Relentless Hex work on targets that are affected by your Hexblade's curse or the Hex spell. They let you create a small localized psychic explosion or teleport closer to the target as a bonus action, respectively. Tomb of Levistus allows you to encase yourself in a shell of ice that protects you from harm when things start looking dicey, something that will inevitably happen to your little D8 hit die body. Cloak of Flies is another flavorful option that lets you surround yourself with a swarm of flies that poison anyone who gets close to you and makes you less likable at the same time. Amazing. Then we have Pact of the Blade and its children. This invocation lets you either summon a weapon out of thin air or form a special bond with a magical weapon. This pretty much does exactly what Hex Warrior does and lets you use Charisma for attack and damage rolls. But it goes further, because you can change the damage type of the weapon to Psychic, Necrotic, or Radiant if you like, and you can also use said weapon as a spellcasting focus. Improved Pact Weapon makes the weapon you summon able to be a ranged weapon and gives your Pact Weapon a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls. Thirsting Blade requires you to be level 5 and allows you to make 2 attacks whenever you take the attack action and attack with your Pact Weapon. Devouring Weapon is available at 12th level and increases this to 3 attacks, which is quite frankly absurd. Eldritch Smite is another 5th level invocation that lets you expend pact magic spell slots to deal a boatload of force damage when you hit something with your pact weapon. This outscales all of the silly smite spells that you get access to except for Banishing Smite, and even then the damage is close. Note that this works exactly like the old Smite did, and you can choose to use this once you hit the target, meaning you can hold out until you get a crit for some apocalyptic damage. Finally, Life Drinker gives you some extra damage and a small amount of potential healing once per turn when you hit something with your pact weapon. On that note, any of these invocations that key off of your pact weapon specifically only work with your pact weapon and not your Hex Warrior weapon, so keep that in mind. As for Warlock spells that stand out, well, there aren't many, especially in the damage dealing department. As mentioned, Eldritch Blast is broken, especially if you take the Agonizing Blast invocation that gives it extra damage on every single attack roll. Armor of Agatha scales very well and gives you some offensive defense, with retaliatory temporary hit points. Hex also does a lot of damage if you plan on making a lot of attacks such as with Eldritch Blast or dual wielding, something Hexblades excel at. Darkness can be cheeky because of a particular invocation that allows you to see through magical darkness. This gives you advantage on all attack rolls against anyone that can't see you if you choose to stand in the darkness, while Mirror Image is good survivability if you plan to mix it up in melee range. Then Counterspell and Fly are decent 3rd level options. Banishment is never not good and can win encounters easily if you spirit a big bad away for a few turns. Dimension Door has some crazy potential and can help you escape a dire situation. Then at 5th level, Hold Monster is just amazing for shutting down a single deadly opponent. And Synaptic Static is finally a blasty spell that can annihilate a group of enemies and make them less effective if they somehow survive. Then, for 6th to 9th level spells, Warlocks have a feature called Mystic Arcanum that allows them to choose a single spell from each level that they can simply cast once per day, no spell slot required. The options here are extremely limited and they are not always great. 6th level is basically a case of choosing the best, worst spell because they all kinda suck. But I think Circle of Death is a funny choice just because of how unwieldy a 60-foot radius sphere is. It also does a decent amount of damage. Plane Shift seems like the best option at 7th level, surprising your DM and declaring that you and your party travel to another plane of existence that they haven't yet prepared is always fun. This is also better to have on a Warlock than another spellcaster who has better options at this level. Befuddlement is just a troll pick for 8th level. If it works, it removes the spellcaster's ability to cast spells, which for a Hexblade means they now have to fight you, and you're really good at that. Then, for reasons that will become clear soon, I chose Foresight for 9th level. This spell gives you advantage on all d20 tests for 8 hours. Attack rolls against you also have disadvantage. The other options at this level don't work very well with what you're trying to do as a Hexblade. Alright, for feats we have a few options that actually look a bit different to other martial type characters. I highly suggest you take dual wielder if you want to commit to using weapons as a hexblade. This allows you to make an offhand attack as a bonus action, and this is separate from the extra attack you can make as part of the light weapon property. The damage is great when you consider Hexblade's curse. However, you are going to need to invest in a few other feats to bring out the full potential here. Then I guess if you really want to, Great Weapon Master will do good damage for bigger weapons and can be paired with Polearm Master for melee, or your choice of Sharpshooter or Crossbow Expert for ranged. Now, a feat that most martial classes overlook is Weapon Master. This gives you access to the weapon mastery property of a single type of weapon. This is something you don't have access to and is necessary if you want to make the most of dual wielder by having a nick weapon that lets you make 2 offhand attacks with your Hex Warrior weapon, one as part of the attack action and one as a bonus action, taking you to a total of 5 attacks at 12th level. Spell Sniper is a good option if you're focusing on Eldritch Blast, but if you're doing that you either hate fun or you're a filthy power gamer. Fighting Initiate is another good option that lets you take a fighting style from the fighter class. 2-weapon fighting is advised in this case as it'll let you add your charisma modifier to the damage rolls of your offhand attacks. Then we have Elven Accuracy. Now this requires you to be an elf, but if you are, then whenever you make an attack roll with advantage, you effectively roll 3 dice and choose the highest. Anyway, this pairs extremely well with the increased crit range from Hexblade's curse and basically gives you a 27% crit chance, which is ridiculous. So you're going to be trying your best to get advantage on your attacks through all the means I've highlighted already. Finally, Tough is probably the best origin feat because you'll very quickly notice that Hexblades have a durability problem when stuck on the front lines. Lucky is also a great option if you take Elven Accuracy, because more advantage means more crits. Okay, I don't actually have a lot to say in terms of species. You can be whatever you want, but my crit fishing senses started tingling as soon as I laid eyes on Hexblade's curse. So obviously Elven Accuracy requires pointy ears to work. Elves don't add anything much more effective than that other than a few spells if you take one of the 3 vanilla options. Sea Elves can swim pretty well, Astral Elves are funky, Eladrin and Shadar Kai can teleport, Pallid Elves are broken, and Half Elves gain extra skill proficiencies. At least if you're like me and subscribe to the belief that they still exist. But yeah, if you're taking Elven Accuracy, then be an elf. If not, then take whatever you want. Goliath Smite, Dwarves are chunky, Aasimar have some funky auras, Warforged have better armor, and Satyrs and Yuan-Ti are resistant to spells. Just some ideas for you round-ear enjoyers. Lastly, let's touch on some multiclassing options. As I mentioned, Hexblade isn't incentivized to keep taking Warlock levels because of how front-loaded it is. 2 or more levels of Fighter are great because that gives you a fighting style, weapon masteries, and action surge for more attacks. No other option will help out your people opener skills as much with just 2 levels of commitment. Then the good old Paladin Hexblade combo is a classic for a reason. Paladin scales incredibly well with charisma, but it's not as strong as it used to be due to the smite changes. Still great though. 2 levels gives you a fighting style, weapon mastery, and divine smite, as well as some extra spell slots. 6 levels gives you Aura of Protection, which lets you add your charisma modifier to all of yours and your allies' saving throws, which is legitimately one of the strongest abilities in the entire game. Another classic is Sorcerer Warlock or Sorlock. You do this if you're going to focus on Eldritch Blast. The Quicken Spell metamagic from the Sorcerer class lets you cast a spell as a bonus action. You can still cast another spell as an action, and both of them are usually Eldritch Blast. I'll be honest, the damage here is gross. Finally, 3 levels of the College of Swords Bard will give you the 2-weapon fighting style, some juicy Bard spell casting, and some blade flourishes that let you add some utility to your people opening skills. I feel like this is a sleeper pick and the Swords Bard is my favorite Bard subclass, so I'm going to shout it out when it fits. Alright, that was the Hexblade Warlock. I think it still slaps, and it's really exciting to see a Warlock that can finally dual wield. Now I'll admit I didn't pick up that the Hexblade could always dual wield, but let's be honest, dual wielding was horrible until the 2024 PHB. Anyways, if you've made it this far in the video, then you're a legend and I really appreciate you. How would you build a Hexblade? Actually, no. What Warlock subclass do you think is the best pact weapon user? I personally think the Celestial Warlock is really compelling, at least if you can make True Strike work. But that's a whole video for another day. But yeah, that'll do it for this one. Cheers.